There's a stack of envelopes on your kitchen counter. You know what's inside, which is why you haven't opened them in weeks. A hospital bill, a past due notice, the amount in red, one of those windowed envelopes that's never good news, and somewhere in your brain, a voice has already written the ending. A repo truck idling at 6 a.m., a sheriff at your door, maybe a jail cell with your name on it. So you keep juggling money you don't have because the alternative feels like the first domino in the total collapse of your life. Spoiler alert, that movie in your head is almost entirely fiction. The real consequences of not paying are slower, stranger, and far more negotiable than the panic suggests. And the stuff you should actually fear is almost never the stuff you do. So this isn't a video about blowing up your life. It's about what actually happens when you stop paying day by day and dollar by dollar. Because once you can see the timeline, it stops being a monster under the bed. My name is Nick, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time reading the fine print on documents that most people shove into a drawer and pray about. If you've ever laid awake at 2 a.m. running worst case scenarios about a bill you couldn't cover, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because today we're going to replace the horror movie with something far less terrifying, a calendar. Now, before we start, you need the single most important idea in this whole video because everything hangs off it. Not all debt is the same. Your debts fall into 3 completely different buckets, and they behave nothing alike when you stop paying them. There's unsecured debt, credit cards, medical bills, where you put up nothing and the only thing backing it is your promise. There's secured debt, like a car or a house, where you handed them something they're allowed to take back. And then there's government debt, taxes, federal student loans, which plays by a rule book that would be flat out illegal for anyone else to use. We're going to climb these from least dangerous to most. And here's the twist that runs through the entire video. How dangerous a debt is has almost nothing to do with how loud it is. The bills that scream the most can usually do the least. The quiet ones are the dangerous ones. Quick disclaimer before I get angry emails. I'm not a lawyer, and this isn't legal advice. Like, laws vary wildly by state, and your situation is your own. This is the map, not the turn-by-turn directions. Let's start at the bottom of the danger ladder with the one everybody panics about first, the credit card. You miss your payment, the due date comes and goes, and in the first 24 hours, here's exactly what happens. Nothing. A late fee shows up, sure, and thanks to a federal court tossing out the CFPB's $8 fee cap back in 2025, that fee snapped right back up to around $30 for your first slip and $41 for the next one. Annoying. Not the apocalypse. But the thing people get catastrophically wrong is the credit damage. Pay that card one day late and you assume your credit's already in a ditch. It isn't. Credit card companies generally don't report you to the bureaus until you're a full 30 days past due. So if you forgot, panicked, and paid on day 12, the bureaus never even find out. As far as your score is concerned, it never happened. Let that sink in, because people drain their savings sprinting to cover a bill 3 weeks early when they had a grace window sitting right there the whole time. So let me make this concrete, because numbers hit harder than timelines. Meet someone we'll call Clark. Clark has a $6,000 balance at 22% interest, and one brutal month, he just can't make the payment. Day 1, that $41 late fee. $41 for being late exactly once. At 60 days, the penalty APR triggers and his rate jumps to 29.99% on the entire $6,000, not just new purchases. That single rate hike adds roughly $500 a year to what he owes. He just got fined with interest for the crime of being broke. At 90 days, he's seriously delinquent, and the letters turn passive-aggressive. And at 180 days, 6 months in, the bank charges it off. Now, charge off sounds like they're sending someone to break Clark's kneecaps. All it actually means is the bank gave up collecting it themselves and wrote it off as a loss on their books. The debt is still his, and nothing's forgiven. What they do is sell it, and here's the part that should make you laugh and wince at the same time. They sell Clark's $6,000 debt to a debt buyer for maybe $240. $240 less than a tank of gas and a nice dinner. And that debt buyer now gets to chase Clark for the full $6,000. That's the whole business model. Buy the debt for 4 cents on the dollar, squeeze you for 40. Medical debt is the one weird cousin in this bucket. For a hot minute in 2025, there was a rule pulling medical debt off credit reports entirely. And then a court quietly killed it, so it's back on. But the voluntary protection survived. Paid medical collections get removed. Nothing gets reported until it's a year overdue, and anything under $500 never shows up at all. So that surprise $300 lab bill is genuinely less scary than the late fee on your visa. File that away. So that's the entire unsecured rung. Slow, noisy, and toothless without a lawsuit. 6 months from oops to charged off, and the worst weapon they've got is your mailbox. No truck, no sheriff, no handcuffs. Now, hold on to that relaxed feeling, because the next rung takes your actual stuff, and it does it fast. Because here's where the rules speed up. The debt people barely think about is the one that can ruin your week in a single weekend, your car. In a lot of states, the lender can repossess it the moment you're in default, which can mean one missed payment. No court order, no warning, no, hey, you've got 30 days. The Federal Trade Commission says it flat out. In many states, the lender can take the car the second you default, walk onto your property, and tow it without telling you first. You head out for your morning commute, and your parking spot is just empty. For 1 second, you assume it got stolen. Plot twist, it kind of did, except legally, and you still owe money on it. Quick favor while we're here, drop your state in the comments because repossession rules are wildly different state to state, and I promise yours will surprise somebody. The only hard rule the repo guy follows is that he can't breach the peace, fancy legal language for he can't bust into your locked garage or get into a fist fight with you over the keys. Your open driveway, though, fair game. And then comes the part that actually raises my blood pressure, the deficiency. They haul your car to auction where it sells for a fraction of its value because repo auctions are wall-to-wall dealers bidding rock bottom. So your $12,000 car goes for $5,000. You'd think that wipes the debt, right? Nope. You still owe the $7,000 difference, plus the towing fee, plus the auction fee, all bolted on for your convenience. They take your car, sell it at a loss, and then bill you for the loss they chose to take. It's like someone stealing your sandwich, eating half, and charging you for the half they didn't finish. So the lesson is genuinely backwards from what you'd guess. The credit card hands you 6 months of breathing room, and the car can betray you by Saturday. Keep that in your back pocket, because the priority list at the end is going to lean on it hard. All right? Back down to slow motion. Utilities, electric, gas, water. The good news, they crawl, and they're legally required to warn you, usually a written disconnection notice 10 to 14 days before they flip the switch. And depending where you live, you might be untouchable for months, because 42 states have some version of a cold weather rule that bans shutting off your heat in winter. New Jersey shields hundreds of thousands of households every single season. Minnesota won't cut your heat in the cold as long as you're on a payment plan. But here's the trap that eats people alive. That moratorium is not a gift, it's a deferral. The bill keeps quietly fattening up the entire time you're protected, and the day the protection ends, surprise, it's spring. You've stopped thinking about it, the whole balance lands at once. And getting turned back on isn't free. There's a reconnection fee, and they'll often demand a fat security deposit before they trust you again, because nothing says, welcome back, valued customer, like making you pay a deposit on electricity you've had for 10 years. This is why $50 a month toward the bill beats a $400 lump sum plus penalties every time. Utilities reward the slow drip and punish the panic. Remember that. Because the next bill is slow and polite too, right up until it isn't. Now rent. This is the big one because it's where the nightmare lives, out on the curb with your stuff in trash bags. So let me kill that fear right now. In every single state, your landlord cannot legally throw you out themselves. Can't change the locks, can't dump your furniture on the lawn, can't shut off your power to smoke you out. That's a self-help eviction, and it's illegal everywhere. To remove you, they have to go through a court, period. And courts, bless them, move like they're wading through wet cement. First, you get a notice, usually pay or quit, giving you a few days to either cough up the rent or leave, ignore it, and the landlord has to file an actual lawsuit, wait for a hearing, win that hearing, and then get a writ of possession before a sheriff, not the landlord, a literal sheriff, shows up to remove you. In a fast state with an uncontested case, that whole obstacle course runs about 5 weeks. Contest it or live somewhere slower, and you're looking at 3 to 6 months. Eviction is serious, and it scars your rental record for years, but it does not happen overnight because you came up one payment short. You will see it coming from a mile away. Okay, deep breath. Everything so far has been the merciful stuff. The slow, the polite, the bound by a judge. Now we climb to the top of the ladder where the rules don't just change, they evaporate. This is government debt, and the government does not need to ask a judge for anything. Start with federal student loans because 2026 is a genuinely brutal year for them. For about 5 years during and after the pandemic, the government basically stopped collecting on defaulted loans. That party is over, collections are back on, and the machine is fully awake. The timeline looks generous on paper. Federal loans aren't even reported late until 90 days, and you're not in default until you're 270 days behind. 270 days, 9 months. But that's not generosity. That's just a longer rope because the second you default, the government does something no credit card company on earth is allowed to do. It garnishes your wages without ever suing you. No courtroom, no judge, no lawsuit. Under federal law, the Department of Education can take up to 15% of your disposable pay straight off the top by mailing your employer a letter. It can also seize your tax refund and skim your Social Security check. As of early 2026, those garnishment notices started going out, beginning with about 1,000 borrowers and scaling up every month after. There are millions in default behind them. This is just the opening act. The mercy is real but conditional. They owe you a 30-day warning first, and the exits are wide open. Loan rehabilitation, where roughly 9 agreed-on payments scrubs the default off your record, or an income-driven plan where if you truly earn very little, your required payment can legally be $0. So, unlike a credit card, the move here is to never go silent. With the government, silence is the one thing that gets you garnished, and if the Department of Education sounds aggressive, let me introduce the final boss, the IRS. If there's one bill on this entire ladder you do not ignore, it's your taxes. The IRS has collection powers that would land any private company in federal prison. It can lien everything you own, freeze and drain your bank account, and garnish your wages, all without seeing the inside of a courtroom. It sends notices and then it acts. Here's the one piece of IRS knowledge that can save you thousands. The penalty for not paying is 0.5% a month. Survivable. The penalty for not filing is 10 times worse, 5% a month. So even if you are stone broke and can't send a single dollar, you file anyway, on time, every time, because the act of filing alone cuts your penalty by 90%. People hide from the IRS by not filing, thinking they're delaying the pain. They're actually multiplying it by 10. And one more reason to take this seriously, let your tax debt climb past about $66,000 and the IRS can have the State Department revoke your passport. So to recap the ladder, ignore enough credit card bills and you get annoying phone calls. Ignore enough tax bills and you can get trapped inside the country. The loud debt rattles your mailbox. The quiet one can pull you off a plane. So speaking of those annoying phone calls, let's talk debt collectors, because this is where the day-to-day fear actually lives, and most of it is pure theater. When your debt gets sold, it lands with a collection agency whose entire job is to make the walls feel like they're closing in so you'll pay. But they're wrapped in rules, they break constantly, they cannot call before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. They cannot call more than 7 times in 7 days. They cannot tell your boss or your neighbors a thing. And they absolutely cannot threaten to have you arrested. Because, and this is the big one, there is no debtor's prison in America. We scrapped those in the 1830s. Nobody goes to jail for an unpaid credit card. Anyone who tells you otherwise is committing a crime while accusing you of one. Now, here's the single most valuable 30 seconds in this video, so if you've been half listening, come back. Every debt has an expiration date for lawsuits. It's called the statute of limitations, and depending on your state and debt type, it usually runs 3 to 6 years. Once that window closes, the debt is time barred. A collector legally cannot win a lawsuit on it. They can still ask. They cannot make you. And this is the trap that wrecks people. In most states, if you make even one small payment on that old expired debt, or just admit in writing that it's yours, you reset the clock. The whole statute of limitations starts over from zero, and a debt that was legally dead claws its way back to life. This is called zombie debt, and it's exactly as nasty as it sounds. Collectors buy ancient expired debts for almost nothing, then sweet talk you into just a small good faith payment because they know $20 can resurrect a $5,000 lawsuit. So before you pay a cent on an old debt, find out how old it actually is. Sometimes the most expensive thing you can do is make a tiny payment. And here's the reframe that changes everything. For a regular debt collector to take a dime of your wages, they have to sue you, win, and get a court judgment first. None of that automatic government stuff. Even then, federal law caps them at roughly a quarter of your take-home pay. And in a handful of states, Texas, Pennsylvania, the Carolinas, they essentially can't garnish wages for ordinary consumer debt at all. On top of that, if your only income is Social Security, disability, or a pension, that money is legally protected, which means some people are what's called judgment proof. A collector can win in court and still walk away with nothing because there's legally nothing to take. Funny how that never makes it into the threatening letters. Now, I can hear the objection forming. Okay, Nick, but won't all of this absolutely nuke my credit for the rest of my life? Fair. So let's deal with it with real numbers. According to FICO's own published estimates, a single 30-day late payment can knock a good score down 60 to 80 points. A foreclosure, well over 100. A bankruptcy, the big one, 200 or more. And here's the cruel irony. The higher your score starts, the harder it falls because you had further to drop. Most of this baggage sits on your report for 7 years. Bankruptcy lingers up to 10. But 7 years is not ruined for 7 years. The damage fades the entire time. It's brutal in year 1 and barely a whisper by year 5 if you're paying on time again. A credit score isn't a permanent tattoo. It's a sunburn. It looks horrifying. It genuinely stings, and then it heals as long as you stop standing in the sun. So before we line everything up, I want to give you something the mortgage broker and the dealership and the collection agency will never offer you. Permission. Permission to stop panic paying. If money is tight this month, you are allowed to sit down, look at every bill, figure out which bucket it's in, and pay them in the order that actually protects your life, instead of paying whoever screamed at you most convincingly this week. That's not irresponsible. That's triage. It's what a calm person does, and it's the whole reason we climbed this ladder, because the practical question was never, what if I stop paying everything? Nobody chooses that. The real question is the one you face when there isn't enough to go around. What do I pay first? Here's the order. Pay your shelter first, rent or mortgage, because the roof is the hardest thing to claw back once it's gone. Utilities next, especially heading into the seasons when they can't be deferred. Then protect the secured stuff you genuinely need, like the car that gets you to the job that pays for all of this, because remember, that one vanishes in a weekend. Then handle the government, taxes, and student loans, because they don't need a judge and they never get tired. And dead last, at the very bottom, unsecured debt. The credit cards, the medical bills, the personal loans, they're slow, they're negotiable, they need a lawsuit to do anything real, and in a true emergency, they are the least of your problems. That order feels backwards. It's supposed to. The entire system is engineered to make the loudest, most aggressive debts feel the most urgent when, as you now know, The bills that scream the loudest can do the least, and the quiet ones are the ones that can actually take something from you. So here's where I'll leave you. Not paying your bills is not the end of your life. It's a stack of timelines, and almost every one of them moves slower and offers more off-ramps than the panic in your head will ever admit. The people who get destroyed by debt usually aren't destroyed by the debt. They're destroyed by the fear, by draining the savings to pay the wrong bill first, by hiding from the IRS instead of filing, by making one tiny payment that wakes up something that was already dead. So tonight, do the one thing the little voice has been begging you not to do. Open the envelopes, sort them into their buckets, and handle them in the order that protects your life, not the order that yells the loudest. The monster under the bed was never a monster. It was a calendar the whole time, and now you can read it.